New documents reveal that the Gates Foundation has given millions of dollars to hundreds of media outlets, investigative journalism centers, journalism schools, and media projects, totaling more than $300 million. According to an investigation by Mint Press News, the grants are usually directed towards issues important to the Gates Foundation.
$3.6 million was given to CNN for reporting on gender equality with a particular focus on least developed countries, while the Texas Tribune received money to spread awareness about education reform in the state. Other outlets that received grants from the Gates Foundation include NPR at nearly $25 million, The Guardian nearly $13 million, Univision, WTA, NBC, BBC, The Atlantic, ProPublica, Al Jazeera, and on and on. So, I mean, what do you think? So, obviously, I work for a Reason Magazine is a nonprofit journalism enterprise. The Intercept is as well, I believe. We have donors, we have funders. It's okay for people to give money, obviously, to journalism outlets that they like, that they support, that they think are doing good work. But it's also, it's also to be important to be wary of ideological capture by a donor's interest, that kind of thing. So, it's helpful to certainly to know that this is going on.
Yeah, I mean, look, like, I get that all of the journalist outlets do this, but it's obviously problematic in its own way. And I don't know what the workaround is. I don't know if there is a way to have truly independently funded media where there is no large donor that comes in or some organization or advertiser, that gives money directly to the outlet. Because obviously, even with this Gates Foundation, people are going to automatically say, well, then, these outlets are going to be pushing Bill Gates' agenda, especially when it comes to the pandemic, which has been like the vaccines, which he heavily invested in, the Pfizer vaccine. So people are going to make that connection. And that's not a stretch of a connection to make, especially, yes, even though the Gates Foundation gave them money for other reasons, those outlets still want that money. And they're going to, be very cautious and aware of what their donors like and don't like, the type of coverage their donors like and don't like. And that is problematic. I don't know but again, I don't know what the workaround is for, like other, outlets at all. I mean, to me, it's a form of advertisement, but it's a little bit darker. It's almost like a dark money advertisement in a way. At least with an advertisement, it's in your face. It's airing.
Yeah, I think a bigger issue with the Gates Foundation money is that it means that the Gates Foundation itself doesn't get scrutiny from these journalistic outlets, and it needs to, because it is playing a massive role in public health around the world, and it has a ton of very legitimate critics, but those critics have a very hard time finding their way into articles in these news outlets funded by the Gates Foundation.
The critics are on the right because they're not getting. You notice that there was no National Review or Fox News or Washington Examiner or the Federalist were not counted among the journalistic organizations receiving funding from the Gates Foundation.
Well, but give them time, because that's the way that this creep works. That eventually these foundations hire people who are like, you know what? Why are we look at this criticism we're getting over here? Why are we not giving this outlet money? And the outlet just happens to have $1 million shortfall in their budget, and it's really tempting. I could either lay off a bunch of people, or I could take this Gates Foundation money, and they swear that there's going to be no editorial interference, and it's better to take the money and do good with it than not take it at all. And the next thing you know, you've rationalized yourself into being on the Gates Foundation dole. And then the next time you've got a story about the Gates Foundation, you're like, aren't there more important things to look at in the world than this?
Right.
And it's not that we're going to defend them, but maybe let's just not go there.
I must be doing this wrong, because I on the show I've defended Facebook at times. I've said that the regulations, the breaking up would be a bad idea. I don't get a dime from Facebook. And then people will say, "But you're only saying that because you're paid to say that by them." No, I'm saying that because I'm an ideological libertarian, and that's what I actually think. But anyway.
Pay up, man. Well, getting this stuff for free. It's outrageous.
You get my views you don't agree with for free.
Well, yesterday, Reuters fact-checked a video of Gates circulated on Twitter. According to Reuters, a snippet of the interview with Bill Gates has been taken out of context by social media users who claim the billionaire philanthropist admitted the COVID-19 vaccines are not very effective. Here's that clip.
It's been completely horrific, and I would expect that will lead the R&D budgets to be focused on things we didn't have today. We didn't have vaccines that block transmission. We got vaccines that help you with your health, but they only slightly reduce the transmissions. We need a new way of doing the vaccines.
Wow, yeah, that would be if we were talking about this during my radar. Jedediah Bila essentially said that on The View, and she got screamed at for preaching disinformation. There you go. He's saying it, which is true. The vaccines are good because they dramatically reduce hospitalization and death, but they don't block transmission. They at best I think they do reduce it,
right.
and
they
very much reduced the original strain, Delta, less effective, but Bill Gates gets to say it. I guess nobody else can.
Right. He said very specifically in this clip, I thought this fact check was hilarious because people that circulated this clip, and I believe I even circulated the clip, said that, look, Bill Gates is saying right here that the vaccines are not stopping transmission. He says in this clip that the vaccines are effective for your health, but they're not very effective in preventing transmission. That's exactly what he said. Then Reuters does this fact check, and they essentially said the exact same thing. But I think maybe what was happening was maybe some people were circulating the clip and saying Bill Gates was saying the vaccines altogether are not effective. And we do know that they are effective in preventing severe disease for a period of time. It's not forever, but it does work for a period of time. And so people maybe were taking that out of context. But I don't actually feel like that's the argument most people make. Most people are trying to prove the point that these vaccines are not effective in preventing transmission because the transmission issue is what's driving the response to the pandemic. It's not about, we've kind of lost sight, right? In the beginning, it was we don't want to overwhelm hospitals. But then that turned into, no, we've got to get rid of the virus. We have to eradicate the virus. We have to stop transmission. And because the goalpost shifted from not overwhelming hospitals to getting rid of the virus, the pandemic response is hinged on this. How do we get rid of the virus?
Right.
And Bill Gates is even saying right here, we need a new way of doing these vaccines. Now, what he's referring to, just so people know, because I do a lot of research on this, is there is development in action currently for nasal spray style vaccines. They believe that maybe if they were able to get this into your mucous membranes or something, some scientific, I'm sure there's a much more scientific phrase for that. But if they can put it directly in, the where you spread it, then that would potentially be actually sterilizing. They don't know, they're working on it, but they know these vaccines are not sterilizing. They're not stopping the spread. And that's what he was referring to. They still do reduce your chance of hospitalization and death. That is not disputed. The data is there. So if you are in a category that you are, in you're high risk, you should really consider doing what you need to do in order to protect yourself. And that for you might be getting the vaccine.
Right.
And that's what he's basically saying.
Right. Since you spread it mostly through the nose, if you can get the nasal spray, that could be effective. And I wonder if you'd see an increase in vaccine uptake from people who just don't like needles.
You probably would. I think the biggest issue people have with these current vaccines is the technology itself has not really been adequately tested for a really long time. And so I think that is more the fear for people, because I think, Novavax is on the horizon. That's a new type of, it's more of a traditional style vaccine. And a lot of people are waiting for Novavax. Yeah. And the FDA is dragging its feet on Novavax. It's gotten, it's been submitted in Canada. It's been submitted in the UK. It's been submitted to the WHO. But of course, in Australia and all around the world. But of course, the United States is going to be last on that list because the FDA has different requirements for the U.S. So
what is the timeline on that? Because I think it's true that there are a lot of people who are like, this mRNA stuff, I'm just not sure about this. It's new. We don't know the long-term implications.
Yeah.
It sounds weird. And so there is this chunk of people who are waiting for that one. Do you have a sense of when?
Well, according to Novavax, and they've given many statements, but according to them, they're going to be submitting for emergency use authorization by the end of the year. And so they're anticipating it would be out sometime first quarter. But they've made statements like that in the past. But at least this time, when they made their latest statement saying when their timelines were, they did follow through when it came to the other countries they listed in that press release. So maybe this is actually more accurate. The real bummer for people is some people joined in on the study, and they're now in this limbo space where they got the vaccine, but they're not allowed to be considered vaccinated.
Yeah, I had someone in my family was in a vaccine trial, and then it was like, well, wait, now I can't actually do it. And it's interesting. Needles don't really phase. I think they do phase a lot of people. They don't phase me at all. And I take, like, nasal spray would be fine. I take Flonase almost daily anyway. If it was an eye drop, I would refuse to get it. I hate eye drops. And then I would become an anti-vax person. And
you'd formulate all kinds of rationales for why you don't want to take the vaccine.
Yes.
Before you would be like, I just don't like eye drops.
Right. But Soave, don't like it. Ugh. Anyway, we'll have more right after this. Stay with us.